Oh, here we go. I'm having a problem here with the chat room, but I seem to be in it. So, welcome to June. I'm coming to you live from beautiful downtown Crestline in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's Inland Empire. And for some reason, the chat simply would not show up until I popped it out. And there's supposed to be a restore option, but there isn't one. So I can't put it back on the main page, so I have to fiddle around. Anyway, I was listening. I often listen without looking at the video on YouTube. And I was listening to David Berlinski talking about a French philosopher in the 18th century. So that's the 1700s, who said, there's a button. If you press this button, you'll get anything you want: wealth, power, sex, money, love, whatever. There's just one little catch. When you press that button and you get your heart's desire, one random person, now Berlinski said somebody in China, a peasant, will die. You will cause that person's death. Well, now that philosophical problem has been updated and used, and it's still discussed over and over. You press the big red button. I linked the website that I found uh, in the chat room. Who will press that button knowing that because they press that button, someone will die? They probably don't know the person. Who will press the button, and what stops us from pressing the button? What forces us to refrain from pushing that button, knowing that someone will die if we do? Well, I wonder because although I do my best to buy made in the USA or made in England or Canada or Mexico, over and over I end up with something made in China, knowing that because I pressed that button and ordered on Amazon or some other website or eBay something made in China, well, it's almost certainly produced by slave labor, child labor, child slave labor, and yet I press the button. We don't refrain from pressing that button. Quite often because there's no other way to get the things we need. Hi, V. Hi, Jan. Well, I was typing, but my cursor popped out of the box. There we go. But we press an even bigger red button. There's a pipeline almost finished from Russia to Western Europe, a pipeline for petroleum, oil, gas, whatever, probably natural gas. Methane. We have lifted sanctions that allow Russia to hire these companies to. Hi, sweetie. Don't have a cow, man. That cat is almost 12 years old, born in this house, and still doesn't trust me. Okay, so um, Russia is not exactly known for liberty and freedom of speech and all that good stuff. They're kind of like the brain in Pinky and the Brain. What do you want to do today, brain? The same thing we always do, conquer the world. I'm not sure that'd be a bad thing. It certainly was bad under Stalin and Khrushchev, especially Stalin. Oh, and Brezhnev. Oh, and today it's Putin. We're supporting a tyrannical regime in Russia. We pressed that button. Even worse, though, in our Green New Deal. What does that involve? Electric cars and solar panels, both of which require minerals that are mined in China by political prisoners and children. We have rare earth minerals in the United States. We aren't allowed to mine them here because it would destroy the environment. So we allow slave labor in China and child labor in China to ruin China's environment so we can have electric cars and solar panels. Oh, and don't forget computers and the batteries in your cell phones and tablets and laptops. We've pressed that button. We got what we wanted, and somebody died. I'm not terribly concerned about Russia, by the way. Putin is first and foremost a nationalist, a patriot, a Russian. And he's attempting to take over Europe economically. Not only will Russia profit from the natural gas, but countries like Germany will be dependent on that supply of natural gas, which at this time they get from American companies or at least multinational companies with Americans on the board. I suppose there's a fear that Europe might turn to Iran for petroleum, but Iran is a Russian puppet. We're distracted by all this trouble in the Middle East, which is financed by Iran, but Iran is financed by and controlled by Russia. They take orders from the Kremlin first and then the Ayatollahs. Oh, yeah. China is mining in Africa. Yeah, China has gone into Africa and done what we should have done. They built the infrastructure, didn't charge these little African countries a dime. But now China pretty much owns a number of areas in Africa. They're playing the long game. What do we send to Africa? Well, aside from military operations to attempt to wipe out terrorism and rescue children from slavery, uh, we send doctors, all our charities, mostly private charities with little to no government funding. We send doctors and nurses and food, and and we open schools, education. And that's nice, but it isn't bright and shiny like a new bridge or a highway or a factory where people can get jobs. Well, we do, mostly private charities engage the whole village in digging a water well so they don't depend upon dirty river water where they bathe and wash their clothes and then have to drink it. Ew. But we've pressed the red button in so many ways. We've opened the border, and I really want our legal system of immigration reformed so that people don't have to be wealthy to get through the system to become citizens. But what we're getting is drug couriers, um, outfits that, yeah, they bring young children across the border and then uh, put them into slavery, quite often sex slavery, have them running drugs and engaging in prostitution at a very young age. These coyotes are not nice people. And how do they keep these people in line? Well, they have family back home in their country. And if they step out of line, their family in, oh, Nicaragua or Venezuela or Brazil will suffer. Oh, wow. The volcanoes in Congo have distributed the cobalt slavery market. Yeah, apparently I saw a YouTube video about how they get cobalt that's by volcanoes and they look for particular rocks that contain cobalt. Cobalt. When I was a kid, my kit had, or chemistry kit had cobalt chloride, a cobalt salt. I don't remember what I did with it or what I needed it for. The only reason I had a chemistry set, by the way, is because my brother fished it out of somebody else's trash for me. Most of what I had growing up was either hand me downs or stuff either fished out of the trash or purchased for a nickel at a yard sale. For example, mom bought me a guitar at a yard sale. I didn't get to go to the yard sale. I got to stay home and clean the house while she went out shopping. Uh, Yeah, she bought me a guitar for $1 or $2, maybe $5, which was pretty much a lot of money then. But it had only 3 strings. Guitars have 6 strings. She never bought strings for it. But when my half brother's half brother, so I guess my stepbrother, no blood relation, but a really nice guy, he came to stay with us. My oldest brother had a different father, and he had gone to stay with his father and learn about him, and he brought back his half brother. Mom bought him a guitar at a yard sale and bought brand new strings for it. Well, I was struggling doing babysitting, which I hate, to get enough money to buy guitar strings. Anyway, yeah, I have like step sisters and brothers. I like some of them better than I did like my birth siblings. I like my surviving brother Steve and his wife Betty very much, but Rick, who drank himself to death at an early age, was nothing but trouble. And yet, um, Rick liked me, loved me, tried to protect me from mom, but he did some bad things too. He was a mixed bag. But when I was born, I came home from the hospital on his 5th birthday, so he considered me his birthday present. Anyway, long, boring story. The point is, we all push that button, and we not so much to get anything we want as that we're left with no choices. We didn't see it coming. We let it slide down the hill, and it's pretty close to the bottom now. If we don't allow petroleum production, pipelines, mineral mining, and so forth in this country where we actually try to reduce pollution. I mean, natural gas has always been the cleanest fuel, and now they have ways of making it even cleaner. But no, we can't do that. We put up a windmill that only runs when it's windy. Hi, kitty cats. Or a solar panel. Sorry, the cats are bugging me. They want treats. We put up solar panels that only work at best 12 hours a day when the sun is shining. And I can't have them here because of all the trees. It's bad enough when a tree branch falls on the roof, it would destroy a solar panel. Anyway, so instead of us producing and even exporting energy, oh, well, Russia has their pipeline. China burns coal in their power plants and they don't even have scrubbers in the chimneys. I once wrote a paper for school on the scrubbers in the chimneys of coal fired power plants and factories where they use burned coal and oil. And it's amazing. Not only do the scrubbers take out all the gunk so it doesn't go into our air, but in many cases they can extract valuable minerals from that gunk. Smoke and ash and oils that come out when the fuel is burned. It's amazing. So not only are they're extracting the gunk, but they aren't just tossing it out, they're processing it further because it's valuable. And some of the things in that gunk are used as fertilizer for farms. They're, they tend to be high in phosphorus, and certain crops need extra phosphorus. In fact, I've been growing tomatoes every year for, oh, since Hector was a pup, plus years. Tomatoes need extra phosphorus. You can add Epsom salts to the bottom of the little hole where you plant your tomatoes, and they will slowly release phosphorus. And I sometimes do that, but I've found it's best to get a liquid fish fertilizer. They want to know how they make it. It's the scraps left over from the fishing industry turned into a liquid that you can mix with water and pour into the soil around your plants. Yes, V, phosphorus and full sun. Oh, I'm lucky because I live in the mountains in a forest. I do have enough room where there's uh, full sun and the trees are not blocking the sun, that I can grow tomatoes. And it's flat. It isn't level. It's kind of a slope, but a very gentle slope, just so that rainwater will run off and not pool up. So anyway, why not produce minerals here where we have not only rules and regulations, but also methods, means, and processes for minimizing any damage to the environment, and where we don't use slave labor and we don't use child labor and we really don't want to take over the world. Hi, Richard. Hi, Morgan. I love my chat room. It might seem that way. Some conspiracy theorists, mostly on the left, are sure that we want it, that the United States is imperial. We want an empire. And we have enough problem with the states we've got. Every once in a while, Puerto Rico or Guam or American Samoa will try to become states rather than territories, but we let them vote on it, and it's we let them come up with the idea, we let them vote on it, and it never happens. Same with the Philippines. They were a US territory. And when the Philippines said, we don't want to be a US territory anymore, we said, okay, go with our blessing. And they're independent now. But boy, they sure don't want us to stop docking our Pacific fleet in their ports because they're scared to death of China. We are obligated to defend our allies, even Germany. A lot of problems with Germany, not the least of which is to dominate the European Union. The United Kingdom kind of did a Brexit, an exit from the U- European Union by the United Kingdom, sort of. It's a tangled web they've woven, but at least, even under the EU, Britain kept their own currency. They did not go to the euro. They have that labyrinthine system of pounds and pence and farthings, and If I ever visit England, I won't know whether the clerk at the shop has shortchanged me because I can't make sense of their money. I think a farthing is 12 pence, but I'm not sure. And then your weight is in stone. Do you understand how difficult it is to do the math when a stone is 16 pounds? Why couldn't they make it 10 pounds? That would be easy. Well, if you're 160 pounds, that'd be stone. That's easy. But suppose you're only 100 pounds. How many times does 16 go into 100? I don't know. I don't even care. Well, my tomatoes, by the way, have flowers. They've bloomed, but those are the ones I bought, um, you know, 6 inches or less in height in little pots. The seeds that I planted are just beginning to sprout because it's been so darn cold. Here it is, the 1st of June. Yesterday, the last day of May, was about 80 degrees, which is awfully hot here on the mountain. We aren't used to it. Hi, Tora, kitty cat. Um, but last night was the first night that I did not need the heater when I got up in the morning. It wasn't chilly. Okay, Tora, I'll get you your treats. She won't leave me alone. Here we go. My lilacs bloomed, but around mid-May, which is late, really. They usually bloom in April, but we've had cold. I mean, 30 degrees overnight. That's below freezing. So, of course, when they finally bloomed, it was maybe a week later that we had a frost that burned all the blooms and turned these lovely purple blooms into a reddish brown. It's been crazy. However, my fruit trees that I thought were dead are coming back. Way out in the back 40. That's the back 40 feet, not acres. Up against the back fence. Sorry. Um, I took a drink of water and most of it landed outside down my front. Um, I have an apricot tree and a peach tree, and I thought they had died. But through all the hours and hours of researching websites and watching YouTube videos, I thought, well, I'll try that. They said the problem is probably nematodes, little micros, well, maybe not microscopic, but tiny worm-like creatures that live in the soil and they, like vampires, suck the life out of the roots of your trees. I was thinking gophers, but I couldn't find gopher holes around there. And I had taken measures when I planted the trees to try to keep gophers away. Well, nematodes will attack the roots, and then the leaves of the trees start to wither and turn dry, and then well, all kinds of bad stuff happens, and those trees look dead. But they said, get this stuff called neem oil. I'll type that in the little box here. Neem oil. It's organic. I think it's made from some seed or something. You get some of that, mix it with water, and water the soil around your trees with it, and it will kill the nematodes but not harm your plants. And the trees seem to be recovering. I'm going to look up neem oil. Oh, it's a neem. It comes from a neem tree. Azadirachta indica, commonly known as neem tree, or Indian lilac, a tree in the mahogany family, native to the Indian subcontinent and most of the countries in Africa. Okay, so neem oil comes from the neem tree. It's totally organic, won't hurt your plants. That's interesting, V. Used to eliminate psoriasis. Well, go figure. It has an odd odor. It's not unpleasant, but you get a little bit of that oil on your hands while you're pouring it into the water or while you're pouring it around your trees, and you can't get rid of it. You will smell like neem oil at least 12 hours later. It won't wash off either. I've tried, but I've been periodically mixing some neem oil into a gallon of water and pouring it around the they call it a drip line, I think, of the trees. They say that's the best place to water your plants, but I put some closer to the trunk because after all the roots come out of the trunk. The drip line is where just outside the farthest leaves of the tree. That's supposed to be the best place to water a tree because the roots branch out from the center and it has lots and lots of roots just past the farthest branches and leaves. Of course, they're assuming that you've actually trimmed your tree. And I do from time to time do some trimming, but I'm way behind because last August I broke my hip. I couldn't do much of anything for a while. And then winter hit and it snowed. You just wasn't going to hobble around in the snow with my cane or my crutches and try to trim trees. And this month, it isn't the best time for trimming anyway, but I'm busy pulling weeds. Tons of weeds. Let's see, what about the red button? Get anything you want, but someone will die because you pushed that button. How many buttons have we been pushing? And we aren't even allowed to talk about it. I censor myself so I won't lose my Facebook page or my YouTube channel. I don't really care about Twitter. I once in a while I share something on Twitter, but I don't get the point of it. By the time I see someone else's post, it could be a week old or a month old. And all I wanted it for was breaking news, from like the networks. Since I don't have television and I don't want television, I don't need a daily indoctrination. Why is it so in vogue, so popular to just shut up people who disagree with you? To deplatform them. seems to me that you'd want to know what your opponents are thinking and saying. Makes me suspicious. Just as I'm suspicious about all these uh, electoral officials who are fighting tooth and nail against audits. Well, if there's nothing wrong, why are they wasting so many resources, money, manpower, intellectual work, lawyers, judges? Why are they wasting all these resources to oppose an audit? What are they afraid of? What do they think we'll find? I wasn't suspicious until they started opposing audits. Now I'm thinking, what are they hiding? There are little snippets here and there of dead people voting and um, just all kinds of stuff. And I've always believed that this always happens in all our elections. What's nothing new, but maybe it's time we push that particular button and put a stop to it. You don't win the battle by putting up a wall against your opponents. Look at the Middle Ages. The Baron would hide in his castle with his troops inside the castle with him, and all the enemy had to do was just camp outside the castle and wait. And that's what a lot of people are doing now. We're camping outside the castle and waiting because they'll run out of food, they'll run out of water, and their defensive castle becomes their prison. That's how Richard II got control of the barons in England. I think, no, I'm sorry, it was Henry II, Plantagenet. Richard II was too busy throwing banquets to worry about his country. Henry II, Henry Plantagenet. See, after Stephen basically deposed the rightful Queen Maud's son Henry, who was in France in exile, gathered an army and came across the channel and kicked out. I don't know if it was Stephen or Stephen's successor, but he took over England as the rightful heir. Even though he spoke no English, he was a Frenchman. But at that time, the only people in England who spoke English were the peasants. Everyone in the royal court had been speaking French since William the Bastard, also known as the Conqueror, came over and defeated Harold the Lesser. So here's Henry II. He rules a good part of Western France, as well as all of England. Of course, not those pesky Scots and Irish, not just yet. That came later. Oh, and the Welsh. They had a border with Wales. But Henry II would simply have his army surround the baron's castle and wait until the baron ran out of food and water and his men were grumbling and finally said, "Okay, you're the boss." I'm with Richard II. He was into fine foods, gourmet even. And for his time, they were amazing foods. I've been learning about that on channels like, History and Discovery, but also this little cooking channel called Tasting History. If you are into food, I'm more into eating than cooking, but I try. Tasting History on YouTube. He, he cooks these ancient foods, and some are not so ancient, but some are from ancient Greece and Rome, and some are more recent, like Victorian. But he'll show you the ingredients and put it all together, and then he'll pop it in the oven or on the stove or whatever, and then you get to see a little in the middle of the video, a little the history of that particular food. Like Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette, they tried to flee Paris during the revolution, but they got caught. Well, apparently, the reason they their castle, their stronghold, Louis the 16th just had to stop and have a tart made with cheese. I think it was brie. Well, you'll have to go to Tasting History and watch his videos. And he explains what a plum pudding is. Plum pudding, the traditional Christmas treat, first off, it is not what Americans think of as pudding. It's more like a bread, a fruit cake maybe. And it doesn't have plums, it has raisins. Now, in many parts of Europe, raisin just means grape. But here in America, raisins are dried grapes. Kind of like, well, nowadays we have dried plums. When I was a kid, we called them, we used to call them big raisins. Raisins and cashews. Ooh, I love cashews, and I'm tired of that. They'll start out telling you that, hey, my connection is unstable. On you. Must not like my topic. I don't know because I wasn't paying much attention. It have plums, it has raisins, dried grapes. And it's more like a think of as pudding, which is the a bread or a cake. It can be savory like Yorkshire pudding, which is basically, oh, let's see, I would take Hawaiian rolls. Don't forget about craisins. Oh, cranberry raisins. Those are good too. All right. I have trouble typing and talking at the same time. So anyway, go to Tasting History on YouTube. It's the guy's name is Max something. He's got to be a good guy. He has a cat. Anyway, I love it. I'm talking and talking. I go on for at least half an hour. I mention something controversial, and all of a sudden my connection is unstable. Please wait while we try reconnecting. Mm, yeah, you shut up all discussion. Just close it. And if they don't outright deplatform you, they allow people to post death threats against you. And that's okay because you're Max Miller. Thank you, Jan. You must be a fan of tasting history. Anyway, like when you shut down the opposition, you lose. People who are not allowed to speak can still think, and they sit and stew and steam, and eventually they're going to break free one way or another, especially if you're threatening them with violence. Apparently, Twitter does not take you down for threatening great harm to a police officer or threatening to burn down a city because you don't like the court of law, or actually burning down a city. Oh, those people won't be prosecuted. They looted TJ Maxx because they're oppressed. Excuse me? I don't know how it is where you are, but I don't lack for food. I don't even go to every food giveaway because I don't need that much food. Once every week or two, I go to the church or the food bank and I get a big box with fresh fruits and vegetables, a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a bunch of other stuff. Like I got a box of rice-a-roni and a sack of instant potatoes, which I gave away because uh, a few weeks ago they gave me a 10-pound sack of potatoes. I'm still working on eating those. Oh, I was going to talk about how I cooked something. What did I cook? Oh, yeah, it must have been that. I wanted sweet potato pie. Our local grocery store is not known for a wide variety, and I could have settled for pumpkin pie, but I wanted sweet potato pie. So I took the can of yams, well, canned sweet potatoes, pr- pretty much the same thing. Yams tend to be orange inside, sweet potatoes tend to be yellow inside, and these canned sweet potatoes were orange, so I assume they were yams. But in Africa, what they call yams is not so sweet, it's more like a potato. Anyway, I had this can of yams because of course we didn't have Thanksgiving last year. Now, when I was a kid, a can of yams, the big one, was 2 pounds, 32 ounces. Well, in order to fool us into believing that prices have not gone up that much, you know, what used to be a 32-ounce can is now 29 ounces. It's 10% less product and a little higher price. Just like a 5-pound sack of sugar, the price is pretty stable. It's gone up a little, but now you get 4 pounds of sugar. That's 20% less product. I could go on, but anyway, I drained the yams, the sweet potatoes, tossed out the liquid, added some eggs and sugar and spices, and used a store bought pie crust and made myself a sweet potato pie. And since I started with canned sweet potatoes, it was relatively easy. And I used my little hand mixer, the electric one, so I didn't have a lot of mixing by hand, although at the end I had to kind of mix in the spices by hand. No big deal. Poured it into the store-bought pie crust and baked it. Came out pretty nice. I think I put in a little too much nutmeg, but what's not to like about nutmeg? I might have put in a little too, I should have put in more cinnamon. Chickasaw. And you're learning many of your favorite meals are actually African. Okra is from Africa. I just can't eat okra. No matter how carefully it's prepared, I cannot get past the slimy juices. I just can't. But yeah. Well, many escaped slaves and freed slaves lived among the Native Americans. So that makes sense that you would have that a Chickasaw would have African recipes. When I read Chinua Achebe's novel Things Fall Apart, I developed a craving for what they call yams in Africa. It's a staple of their diet. All pride is a sin. Well, I don't know. I can be proud of someone else, and I don't think that's a sin. Lost all taste for fish. I'm kind of off of salmon. Don't know why, but I can take a tin of salmon, a can. I use the little one because there's just me to eat it. Mix it with rolled oats and egg, and let it sit a while so the oats soak up the liquid. And if it seems a little too thick, you can pour in a little milk or cream, a tablespoon at a time, because if you overdo it, you can't take it out. And then slowly on low to medium flame, spread it out in a frying pan and fry it in butter. I used to think that saute was frying on a low flame. It turns out no, saute is kick it up a notch. Bam! I forget the guy's name, but saute if you can and sear your steak. You want to just fry this salmon patty. If you want, you can get your hands all gunky and turn it into small patties, but why? Just spread the whole thing out to fill your fry. In my case, it was like a medium, like I think 8 inch, 6 to 8 inches frying pan, because I'm just making it for me. Spread it out across the whole pan on a low to medium flame. Fry it in butter. When it's brown on the bottom, just like pancakes, flip it over. Took me about 8 minutes on the first side and 2 or 3 minutes on the second side because it was, canned salmon. It's already cooked. So I wanted it crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, and that's what I got. And it's very good for you. But I'm really not into salmon as a, baked, fried, um, barbecued, whatever. A fillet of salmon does not appeal to me, but that mixture with eggs and rolled oats, um, well, you can just get the what they call old-fashioned oatmeal. It's the kind that you cook for 5 minutes, not the 1 minute instant oatmeal. Ugh. That's what we had when I was a kid. Cooks in 1 minute. Hi, Buckeye. Yeah, I'm about almost an hour in, but you're here. Um, Somehow canned salmon mixed with egg and butter and oatmeal is so good. And yet I don't want to salmon. I do eat cod. And I'm ticked off that so many of the fish and chips now are made with haddock. And they're trying to convince us that haddock is a really good fish. I think maybe cod has been overfished. Maybe that's it. But I want cod. Or sea bass. You almost never see sea bass anymore. Maybe they've overfished the sea bass. I do know that when I see it, I look at the price and go, I don't want it that bad. That's okay. I'll get something else. I, when I was in college and I had to eat cheaply, I'd get Triscuits, which are a cracker that's kind of like rock hard shredded wheat with some spices and salt in it and butter. And I'd put on some cream cheese and lay a canned sardine in oil on top of the cream cheese. And I'd eat those. And anyone who saw me eating that would go, ew, gross. It was good and nutritious, lots of protein. I'm kind of off of chicken because the food banks and churches have been giving away so much chicken. Apparently, the USDA has bought up a bunch of chickens. Uh, so I get these, mostly the legs, frozen chicken legs. Well, I'm tired of it. There's so many things you can do with a chicken. And yet, when I walk into the market and they are cooking whole chickens on the rotisserie, or they're deep fat frying the fried chicken, I smell that and I go, I've got to have some. And then I remember, oh, I'm tired of chicken. But I did manage a couple of times to make orange chicken. It's sort of an American Chinese dish, or maybe it's Hawaiian. But basically, best with chicken thighs, but you can use the breast. You cut it into chunks, bite-sized chunks, dip it in tempura batter. It's more complicated than that, but this is the short version. And deep fat fry it. Well, in my case, I fry it in a couple inches of oil and then bake it. But the orange sauce is what makes the dish. And you can have these chicken chunks with whatever sauce you prefer, but I'm really into the orange sauce now. It's even better than sweet and sour because it isn't sickening sweet. It's awesome. But what I do, I cheat. I get frozen chicken chunks, already cooked, already cut into bite sized pieces. And I thaw them out And then what you do, you roll them in wheat flour or rice flour, either one, dip them in egg, and then breadcrumbs. Or what I do, I just mix up a tempura batter. I put some cornstarch on the in a bowl and uh, get the chicken chunks covered in cornstarch. It's mainly because they're wet. You don't want dry chicken, right? But batter won't stick to something that's wet. So I mix them up with some cornstarch. In Europe and possibly Canada, you probably call it corn flour. Same thing. Flour, flour. Oh, Jan, take care and see you later. Anyway, and as I said, I don't do deep fat frying because I don't want to burn down my kitchen. And besides, that takes a lot of oil. It takes at least a quart of oil. So anyway, I get a soup pot and cover about 2 inches in oil and get it hot. I should get a thermometer, but since I don't have one, I get a little water on my hand and do that over the oil. If the water immediately steams up and goes away, it's hot enough. You turn down the flame so you don't burn down your kitchen. And I get them browned in the oil or at least partially cooked. But remember, the chicken I use is already cooked. The reason for putting them in the oven is twofold. One, it gets some of the oil off of them. You really don't want too much oil on them. And two, it makes sure that your batter is completely cooked. And if you're using raw chicken, it's even more important to make sure that the chicken is cooked. Oh, poor V. Yeah, deep frying is not for the timid. And I've been experimenting with different ways of making French fries out of potatoes. The difference is I use the same method, brown them in oil and then bake them, but I'm talking about different shapes and sizes of sliced potato. I take off most of the peel from the potatoes, but not all of it. And I learned from some YouTube videos that you need to cut off the one particular end, and I still don't understand how to determine which end that is. So I cut off both of the ends, lay it out the long way, and chop off the ends, and then peeler and just take off uh, like stripes of peel, but I leave some of the peel on. And there's this sort of a myth that potato peel is poisonous and you can't eat it. Well, that's true when it's raw. Don't eat raw potato peel. But once it's cooked, it's fine. Fruits like fruits and vegetables like potatoes and tomatoes are members of the nightshade family. Well, cutting off the ends of the potato, one of the ends is like um it I think it has an eye. It's where the growth is happening. when the potato is growing a new plant, has some kind of toxin or something. Besides, it's hard to peel the ends. Why not just chop them off and not have to go over it with the peeler? Yeah, when I was into sea bass before the price skyrocketed, I would simply bake it with some butter and maybe a little, well, salt, of course. Not too much because it's a sea fish. It kind of has its own salt. But butter, and I'd maybe garnish it with fresh parsley. But cod just cries out to be made into fish and chips. It just does. But cutting off the ends of the potato has a purpose. The one end has apparently the flavor, texture, and toxicity level make it a good idea to cut off the one end, and I'm still not sure how to find it, so I cut off both ends. And using the peeler on the end of a potato is just asking to scrape the skin off your knuckles. Ah, like an umbilical cord. Yes. Right, Buckeye. Yeah, I generally pull out the eyes of the potato. I've washed them too. I take that nylon or some kind of plastic scratchy pad and go over them under cold water. I don't know why, but the experts say to wash potatoes in cold water. And I just learned because my potatoes kept sticking to the bottom of the pot when I was frying them in oil. Apparently, you're supposed to put your slices of potato in a bowl of cold water before you deep fry them. But then you, there's water stuck to them. I put one in the pot with the tongs. It went phew, steam everywhere because of the water. So first I first pat them dry with paper towels or towels, whatever you got, as long as they're clean. Yeah, the skins of potatoes are really, really good for you. They have a lot of minerals and such. Potatoes with the skins on are almost a complete food. In fact, many people in Russia and the Ukraine lived on potatoes under Stalin because they couldn't get anything else. Stalin made Hitler look like an amateur when it came to killing people. Where is that thing? Uh, and then Mao Zedong made Stalin look like an amateur. Oh, what have I done this time? I am searching. Ah, here it is. Of course, when Tora demanded treats, I dropped the cigarettes into the box of cat treats. Let's see. Eating potato skins. Oh, that's how you got to be handsome, huh? You know those things they call twice baked potatoes? They bake a potato. They take a perfectly good baked potato, slice it in half, scoop out all the innards, and then fill it with cheese and crumbled bacon or whatever, and cook it again under the broiler, usually. Or if you're in a commercial kitchen, the salamander. I want a salamander so bad. It's a broiler. You hang it on the kitchen wall and hook it up to either gas or electricity, and it just broils. So you have your food under the flame or under the heating element? Well, Buckeye, I don't know. Your icon is so small I can't tell whether you're handsome. Anyway, I love a broiled steak. In the right weather, I'll cook it outside on the Weber kettle, the barbecue with charcoal. That's the best way. Yeah, I have a microwave. Someone gave it's basically for thawing out something that's frozen or reheating coffee, but I don't cook with the microwave. For one thing, the texture is off when you nuke food. For another, it's just plain wrong. You can't brown things in it. You can't, I don't know, you can't really control the cooking the way you can with a stovetop or an oven. I am so wanting to finish fixing up my new old stove. I paid $5 for it. I have to clean out the spider webs and do a little cosmetic repair on the outside. But it has a working oven. Nutrition is murdered in a microwave. That's true. It messes up the vitamins. Can't really do too much to minerals. I mean, they're like rocks, right? But they can end up in a form that your body can't use. Anyway, I've been on for an hour and a quarter, and that's why I'm rambling and not uh, staying on topic. The red button. Push the red button. Get anything you want. Go to Amazon or eBay or the Home Depot website, or I'm really into Ace Hardware at the moment because our local hardware store is an Ace Hardware, and you'd be amazed at what you can find there. They have a garden shop uh, where they're really focused on organics and natural products, and they actually have knowledge and give you advice. They are helpful, the helpful hardware folks. And then in the hardware store proper, they have not only hardware and paint and such, but household goods like detergents and soaps and mops and brooms and um, they even this time of year stock canning supplies, jars, pectin for making jam, uh, lids and uh, various tools that you need for canning. Now, I don't really do canning. I make jam. It's it isn't really easier, but it's safer. I'm less likely to, end up with botulism or ptomaine in a jam than in canned food. Well, Buckeye, I got talked into taking the Pfizer vaccine. It's 2 shots. I had the first one and I had an allergic reaction, after which I discovered that it contains an antibiotic to which I'm allergic. So, of course, I did not take the second shot. However, get this, I'm not considered vaccinated because with only one shot, you're only 83% protected. But if I took the one shot Johnson, I would be only 66% protected and still considered fully vaccinated. I took the shot because I am going to have to fly on an airplane, and I'm afraid they won't let me on. I might have to go by Greyhound, but that's a little over a year from now in 2022. Oh, geez, I'll be older than dirt by then. Oh well, I think I'm doing pretty well. I'm just a couple weeks short of 67 years old. My hair isn't completely gray, but it's getting there. That's because I was a redhead. We take a long time to go gray. Um, wow. Anyway, it's for the Philip K. Dick Festival in Fort Morgan, Colorado, which of course has not happened because of all the lockdowns. Well, I don't get the flu shot because I don't get the flu. I think I did have COVID in December of 2019. I had something nasty in my lungs, but I wasn't that ill. I woke up in the morning unable to breathe, so I forced myself to cough until my lungs were clear. But, and I had a little bit of a low grade fever, nothing major. But aside from that one day when I felt like a worn out dish rag, I was okay. But the last time I had the flu was either December of 68 or January of 69. It was I think I think they're calling it the swine flu. We called it the Asian flu at the time, but that's racist, I guess. So it's swine flu because it came from pigs. Um, well, I had a runny nose. I was taking care of the sick people. Oh, and it got into their guts as well. And I never did so much laundry in my life. Ugh. Well, the vaccine is not FDA approved. They're only allowing it for emergency use. But I don't trust the FDA anyway. I'm just taking a calculated risk. I thought, okay, I'll risk side effects from the vaccine because I want to travel. But when I had the side effects, I said, I'll take the risk of catching COVID. Yeah, I'm in a risk group. I'm over 65. But most of the deaths are people over 80 or people who are grossly obese and diabetic. Well, I'm underweight, seriously underweight, and no way am I diabetic. Uh, no, not a problem for me. Yeah, my lungs are compromised. I still insist it's from breathing in the fumes of jet fuel at March Air Force Base, because I've smoked since I was a teenager and I didn't have lung damage until I worked at March Air Force Base right next to the airstrip. where those huge cargo jets would land and take off and fuel up, and they'd fill the air with what smelled like kerosene, because it is kerosene. Yeah, there's a small risk with any vaccine. There's also a small risk with any virus. But they horrific numbers. About 250,000 Americans have died. Well, um, out of well over 300 million, that's one fourth of one third of 1%. If I'm doing math right. Oh, mouse. Okay, let's see. Let's look at the US population. 331,449,281. How'd they get the one on the end of that? Okay, so over 330 million Americans alive today, according to the Census Bureau. And out of those, 250,000 died. As a percentage, that's a fourth. And then 300, you want to get down to 100 to get a percent. So that's a third. A fourth of a third of 100. Okay, that's where I went wrong. 100 is 25. 25 divided, this is still just a rough estimate. Okay, it's 3%. Got it. 3% death rate. Do you know what the death rate is for regular flu? Well, that cause the flu, that they give you a range of between 5 and 10%. Wait a minute. How'd I do that? 25 divided by 3 equals. Oh, okay. Roughly 7%, because there's 330 million. 7% death rate. That sounds pretty normal for the flu, between 5 and 10%. But how many of those were in nursing homes? At what age did they die? And how many had other things going on? Because these are the people who died with COVID, not from COVID. If I got run over by a truck, but I test positive for COVID, guess what? I go into that 7%. The fact is, the numbers are skewed first by shoving COVID patients into nursing homes where people are already overcrowded and not well cared for, and near the end of their lives. That's why they're in nursing homes. Oh no, don't even discuss abortion here. Please. This chat room is getting wild. But even if you accept their figures and go with 7, even 8% mortality, it's still basically the flu. And it feels like a dress rehearsal for the real plague. Something deliberately developed in somebody's lab somewhere in the world and released to wreak havoc on us. Let me refill my water. All right. If you insist, abortion is pressing the red button. You get what you want. You don't go through 9 months of something in your belly that eventually starts kicking you and then has to come out through a tunnel that's a little too small while your stomach muscles involuntarily go into spasms to push it out. Okay, I get it. You want to finish school, you want to keep your job, you don't want to raise a child. You're pressing the red button. Somebody will die so you get what you want. I'll do some scripture reading next week, Buckeye. Promise. Um, Now, you can argue about whether a fetus is viable, whether it's human or just a lump of tissue. But even at conception, the embryo is alive. And even before conception, the egg is alive and the sperm is alive. That's why God got so mad, so angry when the guy who was supposed to impregnate his dead brother's widow, the law, spilled it on the ground. Even at that point, before conception, he was killing potential life. He was killing living sperm. But you argue all you want. The minute that egg is fertilized, it's a living thing. And you should take it very seriously when you consider killing it. I personally had a spontaneous um, miscarriage when I didn't even know I was pregnant till afterward. The biological changes in my body were severe. I went into a deep depression with fatigue and muscle aches and a foggy brain that lasted quite, I think, a couple months. And I didn't even get pregnant. But when I lost that about 6 weeks fetus, embryo, whatever, my body was really damaged by that loss. And my mind was damaged. Not strictly because I was sad at losing a baby, but more because of the physical and chemical changes brought on in my body. So I take the issue of I had some friends in the 70s because they didn't want to be treated. Uh, yeah. And please remember that even now, even though Planned Parenthood has admitted their racist origins and claimed that they reject the eugenics program of getting rid of brown babies and black babies, most abortion clinics are in minority neighborhoods, and most abortions are performed on people of color. It's like, here, we'll kill your baby for free. Come on in. There are other options. If you don't want a child, someone else does. They'll adopt your child. There are charities that will support you the whole time you're pregnant if you don't want the child. You know, I don't know about Catholics anymore, about being pro abortion. I mean, the Pope says that our pro abortion president can take communion, but many of the bishops are against it. Uh, Baptists, it hasn't come up in the church I go to. I guess it's just a given that, yeah, there are situations where abortion is either the only option or the best option. But those situations are rare. They're what we call lifeboat cases. Sure, if you're on the lifeboat and the guy next to you dies and he's starting to stink, you're going to toss him overboard. But that's an unusual situation. Mm, Ritz cracker. I have discovered Irish butter, Kerrygold, a little dollop of that Irish butter on a Ritz cracker, heaven. Unfortunately, it really is imported from Ireland, so it costs a little more than twice as much as the good American butters from Wisconsin, three times as much as the cheap generic butter. But oh, world of difference. Now, I cannot afford to buy Kerrygold all the time, but once in a while I get the Kerrygold butter. You get half as much as you get half a pound, whereas the American butter is a full pound, and it's still more. The price is higher for a half pound of Kerrygold than it is for a full pound of Challenge or Land O'Lakes. Well, oh my, I would not waste the Kerrygold by cooking with it. I would taste the butter. Yes, there are homes for unwanted babies. There are people who desperately wish to adopt, but there aren't any babies to adopt. And most of the babies getting aborted are either black or brown. I say that's racist. Just like the idea that demanding requiring voter ID is supposedly racist. I find that insulting. Poor people, of color don't know how to get an ID? How do they enter a government building? Fly on an airplane? Buy cigarettes or tobacco or liquor. If they're too stupid to get an ID, in most states, the ID is free. In California, it costs money, but not nearly as much as a driving license. And in most cases, they'll accept an ID issued by your college if you're a student. They'll, if you don't have anything else, they'll accept your utility bills. Your electric or water or gas bill is just fine. They prefer a photo ID, but if you haven't got one, okay. How do you go to a casino and gamble without ID? To prove you're old enough. If I had dark skin, see, I'm pretty much Cherokee with a black African ancestor. I'm a throwback genetically to my Cherokee great grandmother. Anyway, if I had dark skin, I'd be really insulted. But they also say poor people can't get ID. Well, I'm poor and I have ID. And this myth that you can't bring food and water to people waiting in line to vote, that's horsepucky. Domino's deliver, you can have Subway deliver, you can have your friends bring you food and water, but it cannot have a political message. If that bottle of water says vote for McCarthy, that is not allowed. I wish it couldn't say buy Nestle, but that's another issue. You can give them food and water, it just have a political message attached to it. Simple as that. And I've never waited in line more than 10 minutes, so where are these places? Even down you expect shorter lines in the mountains, but I lived in Anaheim, I lived in Orange, fairly large cities. There wasn't much of a wait to vote. It was quick and easy. Who is Convery? I don't know, Oswald. I said McCarthy, the voter ID bull. Well, I guess Joseph P. is promoting the Orthodox Church. It's like Catholic without the Pope. And they disagree on a couple of main points in the Apostles' Creed. But I find these high churches too pagan for my taste. Even the Episcopal Church, for one thing, why am I blank on the name of the church? Well, anyway, the little Episcopal church, they had cheap incense that smelled nasty. But I'm looking around at all these icons and stained glass windows and statues and stuff and going, those are pagan gods, not for me. Well, I'm all for the environment. I might be a heathen, but I'm not a pagan. The thing about churches is they're supposed to be a place for the community to gather in worship. But if all you do is worship on Sunday and then go about your life ignoring God, you got a problem. Still trucking in water, V? Maybe you should get a water witch to find where you can dig a well. They still use dowsing. Don't make your auntie and uncle leave their homestead, V. And before I could type it in, it reconnected. Okay, it has been 1 hour, 44 minutes. Well, pagans have a point. Read chapter 32 of Deuteronomy and then compare it with Genesis chapters 10 and 11. After the Tower of Babel thing, God assigned the nations to lesser gods. But Jesus preached to the pagans more than to the Jews. And as Paul wrote back to the family, he won't force you to join, although some churches think that's their job. Think Jesuits. Ugh. Anyway, welcome. No pressure. Close to 2 hours here. Going on. Just a minute. Oh, come on, you evil thing. Oh, I was about to give up. I was typing I give up. This without being disconnected from YouTube. Ridiculous. What's even worse, though, is that I can watch YouTube videos, but when I try to load Facebook, it takes forever. And I think I've figured out why. They insist on loading every stinking ad on the page, including animated advertisements, before they'll let you see what you came to Facebook to see. You know, like, uh-huh, I mentioned YouTube and Facebook and they disconnect me again. Well, we've been on for try to load Facebook and see if my friends and family have and year and decade. All of you, and thank you so much for making this such an awesome conversation with all your posts in the chat room. So be good, live well, try to be happy. Let's see, I have to type thank you all for listening. Then